Hello, changelings, and welcome to the Night Garden. I'm VampireAntihero, and this is Conquer Thy Fear Studio. We've all been there as creatives. Staring at a blank screen, canvas, notebook, or paper can be exhausting, and sometimes it can take so long to come up with ideas that we just give up and scroll social media or do something else until hopefully something comes. This is especially hard when you're uninspired and in the middle of a creative block. So, how do you come up with ideas when nothing is coming to mind? As I was filming this, I realized that I had a lot to say about this topic, so this is going to be a long one, more of a video essay than a quick tips and advice video. When I first started with art, I struggled with creative block a lot, so I've come up with a lot of ways to combat it as a full-time artist. I'll be talking about this as a digital and traditional artist because that's what I do. I am an artist, a streamer, and a writer. But this will be applicable to any type of creative push and pull that you're involved in, whether it's crafting, sculpting, whatever. I can't claim to have all of the answers, nobody does, but here are some of the ways that I beat back art block and can stay creating even when I'm low on ideas. So, the first thing that I'm going to touch on is motivation and access. This has less to do with coming up with ideas and more to do with busting down barriers to being creative. One of the foundations of doing things and coming up with things to do, one of the most important ones, is the why you're doing it. If you are inspired, this is really easy. You sit down and you just start going. Your ideas flow like water. But when you're not inspired or that motivation dries up, then knowing the why of what you're doing can at least give you enough of a reason to try. So, why are you trying to create today? What are you doing? What is the point? Are you trying to get better at your craft? Are you creating for yourself or for your mental state? Maybe you feel better when you're creating. Are you trying to build a career? Do you want to strengthen your portfolio? Are you trying to get into an industry studio? Maybe you just feel like it. Just want to create today. When you can't come up with ideas and you feel like creating, it can be really frustrating and really easy to give up. The second part of the art block here would be ease of access to your materials. Sometimes we come up with an amazing idea that we just do not touch because it would take so much effort to set up to make the idea. Are your materials in the same room where you work? Do you have a dedicated workspace? Or are your materials scattered all over the house or your apartment? Or are they shoved away in drawers? Are they in a place that's far away from where you typically tend to work? Sometimes we can have ideas that sound like they'd be fun to do and just immediately shoot them down because of that. Look at where I'm sitting right now. I'm fortunate enough to where I have set up a home studio where all of my stuff is easily accessible right next to my workstation. This is my digital art setup right here. Right here is where I do my video editing and watch YouTube videos and do my gaming when I'm streaming. I have my streaming monitor right here. This is my screen printing desk where I do all of my screen printing, and all of the stuff that goes for screen printing is on either side of that table. Behind me is where I keep all of my paints, my crafting supplies, my Sculpey, my markers, all of that stuff is right behind me where I can easily grab it. This table right here, this part of my desk, this is a tilt table. So I can just tilt it up and put paper here, and then there I go. I'm ready to draw. What this means for me is that I have the ability to get started with a piece with very little effort to get started on that project. And I recognize that this is a privilege. Not everybody has the space or the time to set up their own studio. But the core principle of this is still there. If you work at your dining room table, for example, are you storing your supplies nearby? Do you have a little bookshelf next to your dining room table where you can keep your art supplies? If not, do you have them in a caddy or a container that's easy to grab so that you can, grab them on your way to your workstation? Just making it easier to execute your ideas when you have them can keep that motivation going higher and make the ideas flow freer because you're not immediately shutting yourself down. There's a physics theory that says an object at rest tends to stay at rest. I feel like this can also be attributed towards hobbies and passions. You've got to be willing to start in order to continue. That being said, there are plenty of times where the ideas just don't come and nothing is fixing it, regardless of how many roadblocks you've kind of cleared up or how easy you've made it to get to your supplies. So, how do you beat the block? First off, one of the most important things to remember and to internalize is that we as artists and creatives are not machines. There is nothing saying that we need to constantly produce or to produce quickly to make so many pieces per month, blah, 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 blah. On the other hand, there is an incredibly intense pressure from both social media and ourselves that tell us pretty regularly otherwise. Like, oh, we do need to do this. We feel guilty if we don't. Sometimes if you're feeling this way, you just need a little bit of a break. That being said, if you don't need a break and you're still struggling with coming up with ideas, then don't stress it. That is entirely perfectly normal. Our ideas are never from a void. We are constantly pulling from our personal interests, things that we think about, things that we regularly consume, problems that we want to solve or to comment on, political issues that affect us, other artists and creatives, conversations we've had, etc., 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 etc. I can make this list for hours. Nothing exists in a vacuum. Keep that in mind. Because our ideas are generated from a combination of so many different things, the simplest way for me to explain how to beat art block is to look. And what do I mean by that? A lot, actually, as it stands. So the first thing to look at to beat the block, art challenges. Yes, art challenges. Art challenges are usually created by artists for artists in order to prompt them to do something in a given amount of time. One of the more popular versions of this is Inktober. There are also challenges such as Mermaid, 100 Heads, Draw This Again. The sky is the limit. For writers, there's stuff like NaNoWriMo or 6-word stories. I personally find art challenges that are like, oh, draw X each day, or X needs to be done in an insanely short amount of time, to be extremely difficult and easy to burn out on. But that is also a personal opinion, and it doesn't stop these challenges from being a really easy way to have a list of prompts in front of you. You don't need to follow the X amount of days for the prompts to be useful. If I say to you, draw me a flower, that gives you a stepping stone and narrows down the options of what that blank canvas can be, what that blank notebook, what that blank page can be. If I say to you as a writer, describe to me a flower without telling me it's a flower, then that gives you a subject and the creativity will come a little bit easier from that point. These are a great way to create in a way that allows us to use our creative muscles, our brains, without necessarily having the stress of coming up with an entirely original idea. We don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time we would like to be creative. However, sometimes when it comes to getting started, the hardest thing to do is to start. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. That brings me to my next topic, and probably the most important thing that a creative can do for their process and to stop art block from eating away at them. Warm-ups. Warm-up exercises usually feel like they're not worth it a lot of the time because they're easy or they're repetitive and tend to feel a lot less like creativity and a lot more like work. But the importance of a warm-up when you're not motivated and can't think of things to draw is that they shift the gears in your brain. They shift them into something that is more cohesive to idea making and puts you a little bit more into the mindset of creating. There is no pressure to finish a warm-up or make things look refined, and they also have the bonus of keeping your foundational skills sharp. So even if you can't get into the mindset of creating, you feel less bad after completing a warm-up than if you haven't drawn or written at all, or if you don't work on anything that day or can't complete something outside of those warm-ups. I have 2 warm-ups that I consistently go back to, and both of them are usually helpful in getting me back to a mindset of creating, or at least looking at a started piece in a different way than how I was. One of those warm-ups includes lineofaction.com. It takes anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, and I'm not sponsored or anything. This is just, I just personally like this website for the class feature. But you can also time yourself with your own poses from somewhere like a Dorka stock, or your own photographs, or even just like random stock photos off of Google or something, as long as you have the rights to use those. A line of action is a term that's used in figure drawing that talks about literally what the figure is doing. So like if I'm holding my arm up like this, then my line of action would be through my arm into my spine. It shows which way the movement is going. It has to do with gesture and stuff like that. Line of action is a warm-up about the foundations of character work. But most artists do tend to draw people in some way, shape, or form, and working on proportions is always an uphill battle. So the nice thing about the Line of Action website is that they have a class feature that automatically switches your images for you based on a timer. This gets your brain to stop thinking about making things perfect and just focus on analyzing the shapes involved to get your head back to a simpler place. I personally am very much a perfectionist, and this lets me stop doubting myself just a little bit. Figure drawing is usually best done in person with actual models or quick sketches done in plein air like a city block or something like that, but we don't always have access to those things. So this is the next best thing, especially in this context of this being a warm-up. The other warm-up that I do has to do with shapes. I personally enjoy creating environments a lot, particularly environments that people are interacting with. That being said, we all know that planning a piece can come with thumbnails or quick scribbles, making some shapes in the area. The idea here is to create a random shape and to make things into that shape. This can be a character, an environment, an animal, food, whatever you want, whatever tickles your fancy. The important thing is that you are using this shape for the full composition. Try not to go out of the shape at all, or if you want to make it a little harder of a challenge for yourself, make a shape within a shape to create the composition, but the principle is still the same. This takes the focus off of subject and puts it on form and expression, and it takes the idea of creation from being daunting because I have no ideas to, hey, this one kind of looks like Olaf from Despicable Me, or something like that. Both of these are my go-tos because they tend to be very easy, and at the end, I feel like even if I don't have any ideas that day, at least I've practiced and I've done something to perfect my craft that day. If you're coming from a writer's perspective, this can also easily come from stuff that you see. Describe your backyard in a paragraph, or write about something that your pet is doing. Anything mundane can be interesting once you start to dissect it. Once you get into the groove, you can easily switch gears because you're not trying to get yourself in the mindset to start. You've already started. In the same vein as the drawing warm-ups that I mentioned, there is starting something with an element of art other than the subject. Just like breaking things down into their shapes or starting with quick exercises that move to something bigger, art can be broken into pieces. When you can't think of a thing to draw or write about, it's usually because the thought of coming up with something to draw or write about is complicated and overwhelming. So what is a building block that you can start with? For me, there's 3 different things I usually go for. The first is color palette. Sometimes if I can't think of a thing to draw, then coming up with the colors that I enjoy, or even finding a color palette that inspires me, can get me started on that path. There are so many different resources to find palettes on the web. One that you can find a lot of pre-made palettes pulled from pictures is usually on Pinterest. Otherwise, a website like Coolers, again, not sponsored, just a tool I use, will help you by randomly building a palette that you can jump from. Once I have my colors picked, I usually have a mood that comes from those colors, and then I can jump to a subject from there, because half of the heavy lifting, so to speak, is already done for me by creating the mood for the topic to convey. If I have all dark, gloomy colors, what does that make me feel? How can I show how that makes me feel? That's where the ideas start to come. Another drawing technique that gets me going is scribbling. Yes, seriously, scribbling. When something is there, then the canvas isn't blank, and there are shapes that I can pick out of the scribbles. Hey, this kind of looks like an eye. Maybe I can refine this into something. Then suddenly I have a new piece just because I threw some line junk on the canvas. Speaking of starting with a not blank canvas, revisiting abandoned work can be a great way to break a block. Abandoned work is really interesting to come back to sometimes because we don't always abandon work because it's bad or because it wasn't worth completing. Sometimes it's a good idea that we executed badly the first time, or it's an idea that we didn't fully think through and we get stuck in the execution of it. It could even really be a case of us feeling like we don't have enough technical skill to execute the idea that we had in our heads. Going back to an abandoned work can sometimes give us a goldmine of new ideas. Or at the very least, it can try to give us an idea to rehash that we can do better instead of starting at nothing. Sometimes we can breathe new life into a piece by tackling it in a new way, or we can look at a piece and see what was bothering us about it before and come up with a new way to save it. This is a piece that I drew using my own advice, going to an art challenge for a prompt. In this case, I was drawing a ribbon eel for Mermaid. I abandoned him because I thought that it was way too simple and I couldn't find a way to make it feel not boring, for lack of a better term. I revisited this in August, and it's not done, but I decided that painting it would work better than keeping it as a simple digital drawing. Now it's an amazing piece that I'm going to convert to wallpapers for my coffee supporters once it's done. I've also had situations where I wrote 70 or so pages for a NaNoWriMo and completely abandoned it because I was burnt out, only to turn around and recycle the concepts into fully fleshed out scripts for comics and other creative pursuits. There is merit in recycling ideas and revisiting work. This brings me to my next point, and probably one of the most important points of this whole video besides the importance of warm-ups. Stockpile your ideas. As creatives, it can be really tempting to get an idea out as soon as we have it in the most elaborate way possible. As tempting as it is to do something like that, it's usually not the best idea, and the topic of this video is precisely why. Creativity ebbs and flows. Sometimes it can feel like we can't get the ideas out of our heads fast enough, going from piece to piece as quick as possible to get to the next one. This results in rushed, impatient work. It can also lead to burnout and feeling overwhelmed or overextended. But on the other hand, if you're going through an idea drought, it can be completely hopeless trying to come up with something to create. My personal favorite weapon against this is bullet journaling, and while I know that's not for everyone, it's what works for me. If you don't know what bullet journaling is, it is... The brass tacks of it is that it's a planning system that's merged with a notebook system created by writer Carol, and it's really effective for how my brain works. Check out bulletjournal.com if you are interested. Again, not sponsored, just a tool I use. If bullet journaling isn't your thing, then lists are also very effective. Keeping the first page of your sketchbook free and just adding to it as you come up with ideas and then checking them off or crossing them out once you finish them is a really good way to keep track of those. If you're a digital artist like me, keeping a ClickUp or a Notion, some form of productivity tool with a list of ideas is a really good idea, or literally sticking a Post-it note to your monitor. These can also keep things in a place where you can easily see them. The whole point is to put them where you're going to look often. If lists aren't your thing, then do you have a spare bowl or a cup lying around? If so, one of the ways to keep your ideas aside with the added benefit of gamifying your creativity is by turning your extra ideas into a raffle or a drawing game. I have a Bah Humbug mug that had its straw shatter, and rather than throw it away, I asked my husband to come up with some drawing ideas for me. He folded them up, threw them in the cup, and I pull from it when I can't think of anything to create. This is slightly different than putting your own ideas in the cup, but it's the same principle. You won't usually remember the ideas by the time you pull them, and it really helps when you're uninspired. New day, new shirt. Anyway, back to my point. If you don't have any ideas stockpiled and you still need ideas of what to draw, maybe it's time to stop trying to pull from yourself. All these other things that I've mentioned before this have all been pulling ideas from your own head or pulling ideas from yourself. That doesn't always work, and this is sometimes when you have to resort to other measures. So one of the most effective ways of getting better at something is to study it, right? This pertains to artwork too. One of the most effective ways of getting better at art is to do drawing and painting studies. In writing, this can be translated into describing a scene from another writer's book in your own way. Let me stress that this is meant to be strictly practice. Like, do not try to publish this, do not try to make money from this, do not share it on social media unless you have express permission from the original creator, or you're posting it saying that you did not come up with the idea, it's a study, and showing them side by side or something like that. We're not trying to steal from artists here, we're trying to generate our own ideas. But sometimes doing a study will make it so that you're looking at things in a different way and inspire you to try a new subject after you better understand how another artist works. The old masters did this. All of the old masters did the same subjects and looked at each other's paintings as apprentices and mentors. Think about it. We like art, we like stories, we like film and media, we like podcasts, we like all forms of different types of media. But we all like different forms of it. What is it about these things that we like? What draws you personally to elements in the artwork that you like, in the stories that you like? What is the thing that grabs you? And what is the thing that keeps you consuming that thing? The point of a study is to look at someone's artwork that you admire with a little bit more of a critical eye than, oh, I like this thing. I just like it. A good example of this for me would be Chris Grimley, which, if you don't know his work, here's some of it on the screen. Now, my artwork doesn't look anything like Chris Grimley's, especially my more recent work, but let me show you what I mean. I did this study of one of Chris Grimley's drawings with a Prismacolor marker and some Sakura Micron pens. It's really small, only about a 2x2 inch square, but I did this study, and doing it made me realize that I really like graphical line heavy work in, what I consume. A good example of this is also right behind me. We've got Sean Koss on this side. All of his work is very graphical, stylistic, line heavy work. Wolf Skulljack and Massive Face Art, they have amazing graphic heavy work. All of these artists, except for Chris Grimley, don't really put an emphasis on color. They put the emphasis on their line and on their design work. As a side note, I also really adore Chris Grimley's watercolor work, but I haven't had time to study it enough to emulate it in my own. I really don't watercolor all that much, but I would like to do more of that in the future. Anyway, after I did this study, a couple of my drawings afterwards implemented that line-heavy style, and it inspired me to try and look at a couple of other artists with similar styles, like the ones that I mentioned. I started looking at traditional comic artists and how they handled the human form with line and how they handled shape language and stuff like that, and a lot of that can be seen now in my line work. Even with this piece, which is unfinished, it has a lot of that line work present. Looking at Chris Grimley's work and studying it inspired me to try something new, which broke a few months long art block I literally hadn't drawn for 4 months before this piece. If you still aren't sure what you want to create after doing studies, or if that doesn't interest you, another great way to flex your creative muscles without having to come up with an idea and kind of drawing inspiration from something else is fan art. Fan art is something that a lot of artists do at any level. We're talking from the most basic beginners all the way up to the top industry artists, professional senior industry artists. We consume other people's creations and they inspire us. And this inspiration can sometimes morph into something new through us, or sometimes we just need to express how much we love the thing. The new Sandman series on Netflix just recently came out. In case anybody wants to watch, I'll be talking about this as spoiler-free as possible, just to make the point that I want to make. So no real spoilers ahead, but just keep in mind we're talking about it. Neil Gaiman is one of my favorite writers. I've watched this man at book readings. I have taken his masterclass course. I have read a lot of his work, and I adore so much of it. He's an amazing creator. But in terms of Sandman, I absolutely adored the show. The visuals were so unique and intrinsic to the storytelling and extremely visually stunning. It's interesting to see a comic-based item done so well, just as an aside. But one of the particular scenes that vividly sticks in my mind is Dream and Lucien talking about something to do with a plot point with the dreams and the nightmares in front of the 3 stained glass windows of the throne room. And it lives in my head rent-free. It's such a beautiful scene. I haven't hit a dry spell yet in my ideas since I've watched the show, but the next time that I can't think of anything to draw, I'm going to do my best to draw an accurate portrayal of that scene because it's so striking and I absolutely love it. I already do a lot of high gothic elements in some of my artwork and stained glass as well, so looking at it and doing a fan art of it will kind of count as a study and essentially be a study of that scene. And it will likely inform how I can do some more intricate designing for my stained glass pieces, or give me some new ideas on how to lay out different stained glass motifs. And it will help to break an art block when I inevitably have one in the future. Because that's the thing about creative block. It will always rear its ugly head, and we will always have stints where we have to deal with it. But if all else fails and this doesn't work for you, you can always talk to a friend. The thing that breaks art block the most is when we think about the ideas and about the things that are important to us. And that can honestly be anything. Sometimes all we need to do is get out of our heads. We get caught up in technical stuff easily, or stuck in a cycle of idea burnout where nothing sounds good no matter how unique or intricate it is. Friends can honestly tell us if we're being too harsh on ourselves, or they can spitball off of your ideas and help you come up with something that you might not have thought of otherwise. If I'm being totally honest, this entire half-an-hour long video started as a concept this way. I was talking to one of my best friends and I told them, I can't think of a topic to save my life. I'm going to wind up missing another week of YouTube uploads. And how upset I was and felt like I was letting people down because I can't produce things fast enough. And they told me I was being too harsh on myself, and then turned around and went, well, if you can't come up with anything, why not make a video about coming up with ideas? And so I took that, I made a list in my bullet journal, and I ran with it. I hit the ground running, and here we are at the closing of the video. So, closing thoughts. Creative block is extremely annoying and very, very hard to break. But I hope something in this ramble made sense to you and inspired you to try something new or look at something in a different way. Remember, your art matters. Your writing matters. You may be doing something that someone else has already done, or you might not think that your ideas are all that important. But your voice is important here. You have the power to make people feel. You have the power to inspire people. We are magical as creators. I can't think of a better superpower to have. No matter what, no matter how hard or long you've been creative blocked, No matter what is stopping you from doing your creativity, you are amazing. And you can't lose sight of that in the frustration of ideas being hard to come by. You've got this. So, I think that's all for me. Until the next time the sun goes down, take care of yourselves, drink some water, and do what you can. I love you all. If you made it to this part of the video, thank you for watching. I hope that I was able to motivate and inspire you today. If you like what I do, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And as always, thank you to my wonderful coffee patrons, Lovely Rosie T and Life is Great. I couldn't keep doing this without you guys. I also have a Ko-fi where you can donate, subscribe to a monthly membership, or check out some of my merch for sale. You will also get access to sketches, works in progress, and exclusive desktop and phone wallpapers if you subscribe. If you'd like to see more content, I regularly post on Twitter, and I'm live on Twitch 3 to 4 days a week. I hope that you all have a fantastic day, and until next time the sun goes down, keep yourself safe, drink your water, and do what you can. I love you all.